Hello everyone, I'm Michael, and today, I'm going to tell you a story. What's the creepiest thing you've seen in broad daylight? Story 1. We're at intersection near my house that about 3 months ago started to be torn down for being too dangerous, replaced by a roundabout. Funny thing is, it was a normal intersection, 4 directions, 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out with dedicated left turn lanes. Except, just about every week, someone crashed there. Every month we'd hear of a near fatality or worse. Police couldn't figure it out, so they started to petition for them to change it. They changed the light pattern and reduced speeds, which brought total crashes down, but here's the fuck thing. Serious injuries tripled. It got so bad, they posted cops permanently to monitor the intersection. And what they noticed was, if they watched the intersection non-stop, nothing would happen, but the instant you'd take your eyes off it, someone would speed through a red light or make a left turn on red. They then finally tried one last thing, remove 2 of the lights, in favor of stop signs on one of the roads. First day, there was a multi-car pileup. Second day, there was a minivan rollover. Third day, the mayor's daughter hit someone going 50. Day 4, intersection was closed for construction. Story 2. I was walking along the Greenway in Boston when I saw a man some distance away, walking in the opposite direction with a completely floppy right arm. Like, everything below the elbow was just boneless and his forearm was flapping around all loose. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, so I don't think it could have been a prosthetic or some kind gag. No one else around him was reacting to it. Story 3. I used to live on a farm, and one morning there was a full horse leg on our driveway. Leg still had part of the hip attached and was fresh. We sprinted down to our horse paddock to find all our horses completely fine. We disposed of the leg and never got an explanation. Very creepy. Story 4. My dad, brother, and I went to a movie theater one day in Florida. Was around 4ish, so it was getting darker, but still light out. We went up to the front where you buy tickets, and when we looked around, there was absolutely no one in the movie theater at all. No employees, no other guests. We simply walked in, looking all around to try to find anyone we could to purchase a movie ticket, but could find no one else. All the movies in each of the theaters we checked were running, but with no one else inside. So we just sat down and watched a movie, then left without seeing anyone else the whole time. It was very surreal. Story 5. It was 1984. I was 15 years old and was alone at my older sister's house. It was late morning. I had just got out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel, when I heard a noise outside. I looked out a window and watched a complete stranger tying the doorknob of the main entrance to the railing of the deck with a rope I used to walk the dog with. He then leaned a mop that was on the deck against the door. I called my sister, told her what happened, got dressed, got the heck out of the house through a different door, and hid in the bushes until police arrived. The house was somewhat remote with no close neighbors. Found out later the door he tied up was unlocked. No clue how long he had been lurking around before I knew of his presence. To this day, we have no idea who that was and what his motives were. Beyond creepy, definitely unexplained. Story 6. When I was young, me and my cousins found a bloody shirt in our woods. My cousins and their parents hunted, so we thought maybe it was from that. But then we found a Ziploc bag with shoes and shorts. All had to be from an extremely petite woman or an older kid. When we told our uncle about it, we got punished and weren't allowed to talk about it. I don't speak to them anymore, but really makes you wonder. Story 7. While this can be explained, the image still creeps me out to this day. It was around the time of planking craze. I had no idea what it was and hadn't heard anything about it. Got a taxi into town and was walking around the city center, and life was normal. I then take a turn into the town square, and there was around 200 people planking everywhere on everything. I don't know what was going on. I thought there may have been gunshots or a bomb. Or maybe the world was ending. I then asked someone next to me and they explained it, and we laughed it off, but for that brief moment of time, I'll never forget that uneasy feeling. Story 8. I believe there is a name for this phenomena, but I would never know how to go about Googling such a thing. But this was around 2013 or so, and I was having a smoke in front of my apartment on the front steps in the middle of the day around noon or so. I got up to head back, and just for a few fleeting seconds, while looking at the building, it looked totally unfamiliar. I knew I lived there. I knew it was my home. I knew I had just stepped outside only 5 minutes previously, but my brain was giving me some kind of indication that I had never seen this place before and that there was danger inherent. I just kind of violently wagged my head back and forth like an aggressive no gesture and was immediately back to normal. But I'll never forget that moment. It was like my concept of reality had very momentarily just cracked. Story 9. A man with freshly exposed bone on his arm and missing a substantial amount of skin and muscle walked up to me in a parking lot asking me calmly for cigarettes. It really freaked me out and told him I was calling 911 for him. He immediately ran off and I gave his description to 911. There wasn't much blood, but the guy clearly needed immediate medical attention. This was in San Jose on an afternoon about 5 to 6 years ago. Still have that image giving me nightmares to this day. Story 10. My family had the car packed up for a road trip because we were moving across the country from the PNW to the Rust Belt. We were heading to the highway to get out of town and had to take some weird access road to get there. On the way, there was some man holding a long barrel rifle to a woman's head, walking through a vegetable garden. He was holding it with one hand and had a cigarette in his mouth. The woman was crying. My mom didn't believe me. I was 14. I know what I saw. Story 11. Crossing at a busy intersection and seeing my perfect double walk towards me. We basically eyes locked until we passed each other. A total minfuck. Even more disturbing. Instead of stopping and chatting and being amused by the entire biological coincidence, my immediate subconscious reaction was a massive rising internal rage that someone somehow had stolen my face. Very, very weird. Story 12. When I was a kid, there was a field near my house in rural Florida that glowed rainbow colors. The grass had different shades of color all day long. That field got bought up and bulldozed decades ago for a farm, however. Story 13. This is my dad's story, not mine. In the 80s, my dad was in the Peace Corps and lived in Sierra Leone for 3 years. He had a motorcycle, or some sort of motorbike, at least at one point, and would ride around the roads when he had free time. One day, he's riding a dirt road that snakes around a small mountainside or hillside past some construction works. About half a mile after the road work, he sees a man on the side of this dirt road on the mountain hillside just laughing his butt off. And he was blue. Not like painted blue, but blue. At first, my dad rode on, thinking nothing of it. And then it sunk in that he saw a blue dude sitting on the side of a dirt road laughing wildly. He turned around and rode back to where he saw the blue dude, and there was nothing there. He kept retracing his path beyond the roadwork and never saw the blue guy again. Later that day, he went back to the village he was living in at the time and told the locals about what he had seen. The locals all laughed and said, essentially, "No, you didn't. White men can't see devils." Story 14. On a trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama. Stopped to gas up at some rundown gas station that was also a truck stop in Mississippi. Went to the bathroom, and as I'm standing at the urinal, I had the strangest feeling that something was off. This strange feeling overwhelmed the entire left side of my body. I don't claim to be supernatural or have any weird feelings, premonitions, and I have never experienced that feeling before that day or since. Anyways, I get up on my tippy toes to look to my left where the stalls were located. There was this deranged-looking white guy with nasty, greasy-ass hair and a fucked-up scowl on his face staring directly at me. The most typical-looking psycho killer you could imagine. He had to have been standing on the toilet because I could see his whole face and the upper part of his shoulders. Immediately zipped up and got the fuck out of Dodge. Didn't even wash my hands. Story 15. Creepy but explainable. My dad is a paramedic, and one call took him to an SUV that had driven into the river and was being towed out. The car was obviously not working and the two guys inside had already passed away. As they're pulling the dead guys out of the car, suddenly all the lights flash on, the windshield wipers start going on full speed, and the car starts blaring the radio at max volume. Freaked everyone right out. Story 16. Creepy but explainable. My dad is a paramedic, and one call took him to an SUV that had driven into the river and was being towed out. The car was obviously not working and the two guys inside had already passed away. As they're pulling the dead guys out of the car, suddenly all the lights flash on, the windshield wipers start going on full speed, and the car starts blaring the radio at max volume. Freaked everyone right out. Story 17. Not really creepy, but I was walking down the street on my way to the store when a large dog jumped through a glass window from A second story of a house and landed on the front lawn. I tried knocking on the door and got no answer from them or any of their neighbors, so I called animal control and stayed with the dog, who other than a few scratches was okay. Once they arrived, they called the police to investigate because even the animal control lady had no clue what would cause a dog to do that. Story 18. My high school girlfriend and her family all talked about the ghost in their house and always said that it sounded like a man wearing boots walking down the hallway. We were all very close, and one day when they weren't home, I just walked in and went to my Jeff's room and laid on her bed while I waited for them to get back. A man in boots walked slowly right down the hall and right past the door to Jeff's room where I was laying. I did the next logical thing and just climbed out of her bedroom window. They showed up a few minutes later and asked why I was just standing around in the front yard and why I hadn't just gone in. I told them that I heard the ghost and climbed out of the window to escape. They left their freaking heads off. Broad daylight, totally creepy and very unexplained. Story 19. I was walking past a church one day when I was about 15, and standing in front of one of the graves was a cowboy dressed head to toe in pure white. He looked straight out of a movie. His hat, shirt, waistcoat, trousers, and boots were also white, like an incredibly clean white, as if he'd only just put them on. He was white, had short brown hair, stubble, and was an average-looking guy. I kept staring at him, blinked, and then he was just fucking gone. I live in the UK, so it was weird to see anyone resembling a cowboy anyway. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I could swear he was there. He looked so real. Story 20. I saw a zombie. Naked man, ashy dirty skin, eyes rolled up in his head, stiff limbs sort of lurching through traffic in Jamaica. I was working in Kingston, Jamaica at the time in the late 80s. I asked my Jamaican crew and they said, yes, it was a zombie, but it is a drug, not magic. They said people do this to people for revenge. A few weeks later, I saw another one. An old woman this time. Story 21. I was walking with a friend of mine in the city in broad daylight. A man was walking in Tennessee, fully naked with his wang fluttering into the wind. This shocked both of us so much our brains restarted, and it took us 20 seconds to actually process what we saw. Story 22. When I was a teenager, I was at a friend's house when his parents and family were not home. I was on his back porch tying my shoes, then I went back into his house. Tying my shoes, a 20-second action, no? I walk inside and his entire family is back home and they're sitting at the kitchen table eating dinner. And they ask me what I am doing here. They're staring at me like I am crazy and asking why I just walked into their house. I ask for the time. They tell me it is 6:30 p.m. I lost an entire hour doing a 20-second action. To this day, I still have no clue what happened or where the time went.